Are you ready?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Parishscope. This is the podcast that acts as an arm for the newsletter for St. John's Sand Prairie. I'm Pastor Chris Sansom.
And I'm Casey Doremus. I'm the music creative worship director at Our Savior Lutheran.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. It's been a couple weeks, but busy weeks, Lenten weeks, right? Everybody's busy. I'm busy. But it's good to be back. It's good to kind of touch base again. We've had a lot happen, and I'll be frank with you. We had somebody call in. Now they asked me not to play their voice. So I'm not going to play their voice. I'm not going to announce their name, but they did call in and they asked an interesting question. Now here's the thing though, it really does tie in with what's going on with the world right now. They asked kind of in a more specific realm, like in terms of Romans 13, exactly how far do we have to go in terms of honoring our government? So that's kind of the big question, right? Like how far do we have to go? How far do we have to go in order, in terms of us honoring our government? Now, here's the interesting thing about that. The interesting thing about that is the main story. I mean, let's face it, the main news story everywhere right now is Iran. And it's just too big. You got to talk about it, right? Like we are dropping bombs on Iran, like absolute crazy. We are just blowing them up. And let's call it what it is. I mean, I know Trump doesn't want to call it a war, but it really looks like a war to me. So then that kind of brings up the question, is this justified? And even more so, as a Christian, can we support such a thing? And to be kind of a little bit more broad, can we, what is a, so to speak, just war? Right. And is there such a thing? And can we as Christians in good faith participate in said war? Which, to be honest, is right at the heart of the question that was asked in the voicemail that I received. So yeah. There's kind of my question for today that I think we ought to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a lot to unpack. Yeah,
it is. It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack. But honestly, it kind of starts in a really simple place, and then you just move out from there.
Yeah.
Let me take a drink of tea there. So let me set this up. The answer to this is actually much simpler than what most people realize. We have a gut reaction with certain things, and with those certain things, we instinctively kind of know. And so we have to kind of pose this as a question. So whenever I'm talking to confirmation kids, I kind of do it like this. If you have parents that beat their children, and I'm not talking about regular standard discipline, and I know some people disagree with, certain things, like they don't want to spank their kids and so on and so forth. And I understand that it's a hot button issue, but let's push that aside. We're talking about just your standard, disciplinary practice. Like, okay, so let's say you're in agreement with spanking your child. You're probably still not in favor with beating them over the head with a pan.
Yeah.
That's way too far. Like that's too far in everybody's book. Everybody agrees that's a bad thing.
Yes.
So pose the question, like, how do you deal with a parent that is abusive while at the same time understanding that we have a fourth commandment that says honor your father and mother? And this is a small little blip on the map in the grand scheme of things, but yet it still sets the pace for what is to come later. Yes. So if we look at this one example, of course, we're not going to be in support of anybody who abuses their children. We're just not. There's just no time for it. And how can we justify that? Well, we justify it by saying it like this. Well, God put parents above children to care for children. If you read the commandment, and actually it's really funny because in confirmation tonight we were actually studying the fourth commandment and the what does this mean,
Hmm.
and so we were talking about not actually this, we were just talking about actually the what does this mean section, and and it says parents and other authorities, right? Like God placed parents above us, but he also put police, firefighters, and military and government and all of those things. He put all of those, things over us for a purpose, for a reason. Now, when we go to honor our parents, if our parents ask us to do something that is outside of the will of God, it basically runs into conflict. Do we obey God or do we obey our parents? Well, in this case, it's obvious. We obey God, even if that gets us in trouble with our parents. And the same thing with the parents, right? If their parents are doing something that is disobeying God by the very act of how they are parenting, then their parenting is off. Now, don't get me wrong, we're all sinners and we're all going to make mistakes. But at the same time, like somebody who is actually abusing their child, well, that is going absolutely positively against the will of God. They need to be stopped, and quite frankly, it is up to some of those other authorities and police officers and all the like to kind of maybe put a stop to it, if you will. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes some kind of sense.
Yes, it definitely does. Yeah.
Okay, want to make sure I'm not like veering off the path.
No. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. And I think it's, you know, like you said, this is like a small example, like a small as in it's not like a international issue, but it is the same. I think of it's the same practice as Christians, with this subject as it would be with, a war or whatever. So I get what you're trying to say with it.
Yes. And so again, you can kind of start to expand all of this out. Like God gave us government, but sometimes that government acts poorly. And when that government acts poorly, we stand opposed. If the government tries to get us, force us or convince us to act outside of the will of the Lord, then we stand contrary to the government. But at the same time, and honestly, this is where some of this stuff gets really interesting. Like, if they're not, then we have to understand that God placed them above us and we need to obey them.
Hmm.
This was a really hard thing, and it was a hard pill to swallow, if I'm honest. It
Yeah.
was a hard pill to swallow during COVID because all around us, it seemed like everybody was saying the masks are stupid, don't do the mask, yada, yada, yada. But our governor in the state of Illinois required all the school children and all the people going into a school to still wear a mask.
Yeah.
I completely and utterly disagreed with that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I had to acknowledge that what the governor was asking us to do was not something that defied the will of the Lord. I know some people tried to make that case, but I just disagree. I think most of their arguments were a stretch. Um,
Yeah.
and so while I disagreed with it, I also complied with it because because well, it did not strictly go against the will of the Lord. And so, there was no Bible verse I could point to and say, see, we're not supposed to do that. And again, I know some people did, they made some arguments, utilizing some verses, and so on and so forth. But I think that unfortunately using those verses, you could stretch them and they'd become, very, you could get them to basically say all kinds of things, like
Hmm.
to the point where like a welder shouldn't wear a welding mask, and it's like, well, if that's the case, then we got all kinds of problems.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is where you get into some of these discussions. Um, as long as what they are doing is not necessarily going and contradicting the Lord, then we should probably, as Christians, comply with the government. And I know that's not
Hmm.
what everybody wants to hear. I get that. So now the larger question at hand. So now we zoom out, right? We took this singular example of an abusive parent and the fourth commandment, And then we kind of zoom out and we go, okay, well, what about the Iranian war, which is, again, I know we can call it an excursion, we can call it this, we can call it that, we can call it whatever we want, but we're dropping bombs on Iran. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what about something like this? And this is where things like this get really confusing. If you believe what Trump says, which is to say that they were an imminent threat and they were going to attack us, or at least attempt to attack us, or attack our bases, or whatever it is. If you believe that, then this war becomes an act of protection. Protection for the sake of the American people, which is why the government itself carries the two-edged sword, as the Bible says. It
Mm-hmm.
carries that sword in order to protect those people. And so in that particular case, in terms of the realm of protection, this could actually be a justified war. Now, but realize what I said. You have to believe what Trump said. If you
Right.
don't believe what Trump said, I could see somebody saying, well, we've instigated an attack on Iran and they did not instigate an attack on us. Now, again, the Iran acted really crummy for this whole time and has considerably acted crummy the whole time. And quite frankly, I am not losing any sleep by their bombing and destruction. And I hate to say that, it might sound awful, but some of the atrocities that they have committed almost bring this to bear. But that
Mm-hmm.
being said, I could see how somebody might say, well, the war isn't justified because we instigated, they did not attack us, and therefore we're not really protecting anybody. They were no threat. They were no threat to us.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the thing and that's why politics can get so sticky because if you agree with Trump, I think that there's very clearly a very justifiable case for here.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
you have to agree with him. Like they were an imminent threat of sorts. Now, it might not have been an imminent threat in the United States. It might have been only an imminent threat for those military bases that were around. But, and then of course you talk about nuclear weapons. Like if they got nuclear weapons, they would be a threat to everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
And and that's just, yeah. I mean, again, just understand what they have said over the years. They would be a threat to everybody.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, what, especially this whole thing, I think, and we talked a little bit about this last week or the last time, is that people kind of find, or we all have, I think, a limit to how much we can take mentally with this stuff. And Facebook or any
Oh yeah.
social media has a lot of stuff that is not true. It's got a lot of stuff that is maybe is true, and there's a lot of stuff that is complete speculation that's being told to you as this is the 100% truth. you know like you said, if you believe Trump, I feel like the reality is I have zero idea what really is happening in Iran. Zero.
Yeah.
I mean, I can take people's word for it. I can see videos online of people posting them who live in Iran. I can see, but the truth is, I don't know, especially now with AI and everything going on, a lot of it is very
True.
hard to tell whether it's real or not, you know? And, they're posting, there's been posts of gatherings of people, and then someone shares a photo of a funeral from 4 years ago, and it's the same exact photo, and you're going, oh man, so they're just using, and
Yeah.
the thing is, it's hard to know what's true and what isn't. And I think we have our limit, and at some point people are going to shut off and say, this is all I can take, so I'm just going to make my decision with this amount of information, and
Hmm.
and they're done. And the thing that got me is I saw uh, a lady on my social media who was a former youth minister, and she posted that she just thinks it's disgusting that we're in a religious war and that we're just trying to kill Muslims. And I'm not saying that the fact that it's something to do with Muslim has any sort of factor into this. I'm sure there is something to do with that, but there are so many other things this is involved in. And quite honestly, there's so many things that we probably don't even understand or know about at this point. And so the thing to me is I see her making this decision that this is all I'm gonna all I have no more mental capacity to keep listening to this. So I'm just going to decide right now, oh, this is a Christian versus Muslim issue. I think that's wrong. Here's my stance. And so I feel like I'm in a very weird place with this whole thing cuz I don't want us to be in a war. I don't want, obviously I hate the fact that we're bombing people, but I also don't know, like you said, there might be a it might be protection, you know, and there's other things going on, but I think everybody has to kind of understand that you may have to take a long time to understand what's really happening and
And
not to just make your decision within 10 minutes of being on TikTok or being on Instagram because you saw one person make a post and now you've decided this is my stance because I just don't want to think about it anymore. So I'm just going to decide with this information that I don't even know whether it's true or not. I'm just going to make my decision now. You know, I don't know if that makes sense. I
yeah,
hope that makes sense. I'm always so worried because I am so aware of how much I'm not just fake news, but like fake information that's being put out there by independent people who don't even know what's going on, but they're going to tell you this is what's happening when they actually don't know. They're just kind of going off of other people that they've seen make stuff up. And it just, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people who they've made up 100% their decision. There was somebody the other day I was talking to, and they were bringing up Korea, North and South Korea,
hmm,
and they decided because they heard one person say that South Korea is so good at propaganda that they make North Korea look bad. So they've made the decision that actually South Korea is the evil one and North Korea are the good guys, and that they hope that North Korea takes over South Korea. And it's like, have you ever looked into anything about North Korea? Nope.
yeah,
He
yeah,
has zero. He is not going to go look up anything about it. And he's like, it's all propaganda. And I'm like, it's not. I've listened to people who have escaped North Korea who are in America now giving their testimonies. And he's like, no, it's all just propaganda. They're getting paid. And it's like, but he decided he was done. He
yeah.
heard one person give an opinion, and this is his decision for now on. North Korea's the good guys. South Korea, they're all horrible people, and he's just made that decision 100%. And so that something like that really worries me, and I just hope we're all going through a little bit of this probably of like being a little like we don't want to be in a war, of course, but just to make sure you take it day by day a little bit, try to
Mhm.
get some information that you can, try to have good discernment. And if somebody who has no idea what they're talking about is telling you stuff like it's a fact, maybe try to be aware of that and not just buy it without any evidence of anything. So I'm sorry, I know I don't want to sound too preachy. I really worry because social media has such an effect on people and
Oh,
their
for sure
mental
it does.
health and the way they perceive things. And so it's just, you got to really, really be careful with what you're seeing. I know that I can't escape it. It's like I'm scrolling through Facebook Reels and it's a ton of political stuff. And sometimes I'm trying to just get away from that because I just need like a break and it'll just keep coming at you. So
Yeah.
just be aware of that and try to make sure that you're not just making snap judgments based on things that don't have any real information.
Well,
So
and
anyway,
you were talking about this like a couple weeks ago about terms of like your algorithm and all that kind of stuff,
mm-hmm.
and what's really fascinating about a lot of that is like pushing aside the fact that we have things like AI and we have things like these video and story creators of fake news and yada yada yada. The reality is that as human beings, we're almost in a point where we have kind of almost like an information overload, and that's not even accounting for the false information. And to be honest with you, like I also feel like we're in an age where since negative information sells, it does so really good, but
Oh
it
yeah.
does so really well, and we get bombarded with negative news. But and this is just the reality of it is, and I think I think I talked about this not long ago, but it is it is very much in line with what we're starting to understand in terms of brain science and what they call cognitive behavioral therapy in terms of like the electrical impulses in our brains. We create these pathways in our brains. And so like, they say like if you're looking at somebody and you have negative thoughts about that person, um and then like every time you see them you think about negative thoughts, it'll actually get easier to think negatively about that person, and it'll be
Yeah.
a lot harder to think positive because your brain will naturally strengthen the neurotransmitters that go in a negative direction. So it'll be really easy for your brain to think negatively. It'll be really hard for your brain to think positively. And
Hmm.
again, it kind of goes in line with these algorithms, right? Like if you keep looking at negative news and negative thoughts and the world's coming to an end and everything's over and yada yada yada, um, over time that will, it'll impact the way you think in terms of long term and your brain and how it actually works. There is a cost to all of this negative news, and so you keep positive, everybody. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know.
At least don't just give up and say, well, I'm too depressed with this information, so I'm just gonna stop listening
Yeah,
or
I mean,
looking into it because you do. I mean, I it is hard to find like really great sources of information because everybody kind of has a biased side to it,
yeah.
and they have sort of an agenda that they're trying to push, and so it's very hard to find you know a purely factual information. And even some of those people who attempt to do that, they don't even have all the information,
Well,
so
yeah. And so I remember in college, so I was a history major, and I remember in college we had to read original sources. And several of the things that I found out was that JFK, for instance, said the word about a million times.
oh yeah.
I've also been told that I also say the word 1,000 million times. So I guess I'm in good company. I don't know. But anyway, so
Yeah.
but you also find out just how much stuff, like there's no way the people knew and understood what was going on. They can only release so much, and some of that actually has to do with in terms of actual like security. Like, right, if everybody knew everything, it would actually be a security threat because then people could hypothetically expose our weaknesses.
Right.
It's kind of like having a random gap in your armor, but you hide it. You don't want to say, here's this gap I have in my armor. Like, that's a
Yeah.
bad idea. And so you end up saying, okay, let's actually back up. We're not going to release everything to the people for the sake of national security, but we'll release some things. And I think some of this is that, like, Trump seems to speak very confidently. And I think
Yeah.
time will tell whether or not he was correct or not. But I
Yeah.
just hope, and if we've made up our minds already, you're absolutely right. Like if we've made up our minds already, then we're going to end up in a place where we just kind of, say, oh, well, I don't care what evidence they have, and it's like, well, okay, that's no good. I think
Yeah.
everybody is pretty much on the same page. Like Iran does not need nuclear weapons. They have already said and spoken that they would have obliterated Israel and pretty much any Jew that they could find.
Yeah.
They did not like people of Jewish faith. So yeah, you
Well,
know,
yeah.
yeah.
And now I mean I know people who are now their whole thing is how, the Jewish people are all horrible and that they should kill 'em. It's like I've heard some really crazy things being said that I just like I don't think any of us are sitting here saying I hope all the Iranian people are killed. That's
Oh,
not
absolutely not.
that's not desire, but then I hear it on the opposite end of people trying to say, well, the Iranian people, they never did anything wrong. And it's like, well, and again, that's where people sometimes just they're tired. They've had all they can put up with, and so they
Mhm.
stop and they don't want to process, the fact that women are not treated well in that country,
Yeah.
and then there people here in our country have way more rights, especially women compared to there, but it's not okay here. They don't have enough, but over there it's totally fine because that's part of their culture. It's like it's kind of baffling to me just because they'll contradict themselves, but it's because they just can't take anymore. They're done. So they just decide this is what I believe. And then anytime someone says something, they just say, well, I don't care what you say. I just, if you think that killing Muslims, they'll break it down to the simplest fact that they don't agree with and
Yeah.
say, well, I don't care what you say. Well, if you
You
think
think
killing
killing
Muslims
Muslims
is
is
a
a
good
good
thing,
thing,
then
then
I don't want to talk to you. And it's like, that's not what any of us are saying, or
yeah,
anybody's saying.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm just, every time stuff like this is or anything like this is happening, or well, this hasn't happened for a while. I mean, but like, just when the internet goes crazy, it always concerns me because I see a lot of people who are kind of losing their minds, and they're not using discernment and
Yeah.
understanding what is, someone's just using for clickbait, who's just trying to get views,
Yeah.
who got information but they didn't research it, and
Well, hey
yeah,
everybody, it's Lent. It's a great time to take a break.
it is.
But yeah, I mean, again, but what this all really boils down to in terms of, is this a just war or is it not, is the question of, is our action as the United States doing something that is ultimately protecting the people? Is it part of this idea of our government has an arm to protect people? And that is a huge part of it. Now we could break into some other territories too, but I don't want to get into too much. I mean, we could start arguing about, whether or not it is a government's right to basically punish another government for atrocities that that government commits.
Yeah.
And this would give you into things like World War II. Like, was it right for us to engage with Germany, since Germany didn't really necessarily fight against the United States?
Yeah.
We could say that they waged war with all kinds of other countries, but they did not technically wage war with. Now, again, and I know somebody's going to bring up some other, like, points of history. Well, they blew up one of our boats and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, well, okay, but again, that being all I'm saying is there's all kinds of different variables. But the question we have to ask is are there enough reasonable indicators that what they were doing or had done or were going to do threatening the lives of the American people in one way or another, whether that's attacking a military base or attacking us in terms of our homeland and our home front? And if that is the case, then this could be considered a justifiable war. If there's none of that, if there's absolutely none of that, and we were the ones that completely instigated this with absolutely nothing else, well, then you're looking at a completely different story. The government serves to protect the people, and among other things. And again, it does serve other purposes as well, but that's a big one in terms of our Christian mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It really is. And that's why I think people got to let themselves, have time to actually contemplate it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely. And we got to remember, though, we have to remember that as Christians, we do not base our principles and our laws based on what feels right. We don't base it off of, what we want. We don't even base it. Like, here's the big thing. Like, I think about this sometimes because I'm a nerd, I guess. I don't know. But like, when we look at laws, like how laws are constructed and all that kind of stuff, our whole secular world has an interesting set of laws. And in fact, I wish we could have somebody on the show. And maybe one of these days I'll bring somebody on the show who knows a lot more about, the legal system and everything. But at the same time, it's like, we look at some of these laws and it's like, one of the things that we need to realize is that from a philosophical standpoint, if you take something and you devoid it of God, you run yourself into a very weird, awkward position. and you can push this to the extreme, by the way, and the extreme is really scary.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, and I'll give you an instance. Like let's say my neighbor does something to me and upsets me. Okay. And I just despise my neighbor. I hate my neighbor. Now, if I'm a Christian, I know that I am called not to hate, and
Yeah.
that the hatred that is inside of me is incorrect. It's wrong. Like, even if they do me an injustice, and even if they do me wrong, um, the reality is that hatred that I have in my heart is incorrect. And not only should I not act on it, I should not even have it in there, and I need to find ways to hopefully purge it from me. Lots more prayer time, lots more reading scripture and the like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm in the secular world and I do not have a God, and I say, okay, well, then why shouldn't here's the thing, why shouldn't I go kill my neighbor? And I know that seems really extreme, and I mean, again, the point of the example is to be extreme. So,
Right. Well,
so
if you have no moral,
well,
stand, if you have nothing you stand on morally, yeah,
yeah,
it might be a question.
and that's just it. It is. It becomes a question. Now, we might say, well, because you'd get caught and you'd be arrested and you'd go to jail, and you don't want to go to jail. But realize, like, that's the whole principle. The whole principle is now based on, the deterrent. I don't want to go to jail, therefore I will not murder people. Now, some people will say, well, but you know, we should have our laws based on, the other person and not wanting to hurt the other person. And I go, why? Why should I care about the other person? And again, it's all good to think about. I think we should care about other people, but I believe we should care about other people because I believe in a good God who has created them. And because I believe in a good God that has created them, I believe that we should care for other people. But if you don't have a God, then why do you care for other people? And it's like,
Yeah.
and that's actually a really tough question. Um, And then you can even go further and say, well, if I don't really have to care for other people, I can only care for myself because it's my own perspective, and my perspective is the only one that matters now. And since my perspective is the only one that matters now, the only reason I wouldn't kill my neighbor is because I think I can get caught. Now, you take that out and you go, okay, well, I think I can get away with it. So now what? I should go kill my neighbor? I guess that sounds awful.
Right. Yeah. I'm. It's amazing how if you if you view life single hand or just all according to you and what affects you personally, it's amazing how different life is when you don't have a moral, you don't have God in your life.
Yeah.
Because even just like the questions you ask are so different because it really just becomes a question of like what can you get away with and what's the consequences for doing something,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean that's also I would say there, like you said, that's kind of part of why you don't do those things, why the Bible says don't do them. But yeah, if you can get away with something, then it's like why wouldn't you? Why would, if you don't like your neighbor, he annoys you, and you could get away with it, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? You
Yeah.
know, it's just you don't feel any remorse for that person. So it's just yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it really is the philosophy of a psychopath. And this is to some degree what stands at least a little bit at the core of philosophical thought known as existentialism, which basically views everything from my own perspective. Um,
yeah,
so an existential crisis is where we begin to realize, like, there's in essence a big massive world that is outside of us, and we're a tiny little blip on it, and that blip is going to end one day, kind of thing. And it's like that becomes an existential crisis, a crisis of perspective. So
hmm
you know it's it is kind of a wild thought, but yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so anyway, just yeah, kind of what we've been saying. Just pause a little bit, think a little bit, read a little bit. But honestly, even if you can't read, if you're just like, I'm done, I'm out of it, like, just by all means pause. Don't even state
yeah,
your opinion. Just reserve the right to come to an opinion later. Just pause, get away from the internet for a little bit, get away from Facebook or something, go meditate, go pray. It's a good time of year to do it. Lent is awesome.
yeah. Well, and like I've been using an audiobook because I'm not a good reader. And I've been working my way through the Bible, and it's really interesting because there are times where I I've never read the Bible straight through before,
Yeah.
and it's so strange that well, and I mean, most people are probably thinking we all know this already, Casey, but um, I I feel like there's times I'm scrolling and scrolling, and it's just I can feel my brain hurting. Like this
Oh
is
yeah.
too much. This is all this, and it's all just, and it's also I don't know what's true and what's not. And then it's like if I just pull up that audiobook and I just start listening to the actual words of the Bible, it's like I just know this isn't anybody's opinion telling me how to view the Bible or what to,
Yeah.
actually you should take that verse like this instead. Not even that. It's just I'm just listening to something that is exactly what it is. And it feels like the only uh like light in the storm or whatever you want to say. I don't know it feels like this is real. I can actually just listen to this and I know I'm listening to something real, if that makes sense. I'm sure
Oh,
it makes sense to
absolutely.
me.
But again, and I think I've brought this up before, but like the early church so believed in the power of the word of God. Even when it came to reading scriptures, like we read scriptures for all of our services, and even when it
Mhm.
came to reading scriptures, they would, again, they would put chant notes, and that's actually part of the way chanting kind of got started in the church, was they'd put chant notes so that the lector, whoever is reading the Bible, couldn't add inflection, because they felt
Right.
inflection was too much. It was like it was trying to add to scripture, and they didn't even want that. And so
Right.
they believed so firmly that that just hearing the words of scripture, even outside of inflection and commentary, that it was so powerful that it would impact you. And so you're absolutely right. Like, you're listening to the Bible, you're hearing it, um, and to some degree, and I hate to say this because I'm a big reader, right? But
Yeah.
like, there is something to be said about listening to it. Even,
Yeah.
even, it's different than reading, and reading definitely has its place, but even compared to just reading it, like just listening to it, just letting it sink in and just like really listening to it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's yeah, with everything that's been going on and how crazy it is, it just feels like, man, this is something solid and real, and it just yeah, I don't get that same feeling when I'm listening to a political commentator, you know? I don't have that same feeling, so
yeah,
yeah.
right. Yeah, I get that. I get that. Absolutely. So, are we ready
I think
to
we're ready to move on.
kind of done this one to death, I think?
Yep. Well, we gotta make our money.
Yeah, that's right. Got to make our money.
Negativity sells, so we gotta go with the sad
Oh yeah,
story,
that's
so
right. That's right. The negative stories. We got to do it. Got to do it. All
yeah.
right. All right. Here we go to our next segment.
Welcome now to Saints in the Shadows. Hear the stories of the saints, learn about things you never knew. See if you can figure out who the saint is before the end.
All right. Today, the saint is called the Wanderer. Places have a way of holding stories, not just in its stones and rivers, not just in its legends and lilt, but in the wind itself. When the whispers of travelers who became teachers, of captives who became shepherds, of strangers who became saints. And before this land ever knew his name, it knew his footsteps. For he came first not as hero, not as bishop, not as herald of the faith, but as a slave. For today's episode, we're going to call him the Wanderer. He had not been born on that particular island. His home was centuries away in Roman Britain, a place with Latin roads and Christian households, and the comfort of familiarity. He was the son of a deacon, the grandson of a priest. Faith was the family business, but faith is not always the family language. As a youth, he didn't much care for religion. He said it himself later. He drifted, he shrugged, he ignored. And that's often when life intervenes. At 16, the sea stole him. Raiders swept along the coast, capturing him with others, and carried him across waters he had never imagined crossing. One day he was a boy, the next he was property. The wanderer found himself tending sheep on cold hills where the rain felt ancient and the silence felt eternal. But silence, if you sit in it long enough, becomes a sanctuary. And the boy who had once ignored God began to pray, out of loneliness at first, then out of hunger, then out of hope. He prayed hundreds of times a day, he would later write. And in that lonely world, prayer began to shape him. 6 years passed. Then one night came a voice, not the voice of a raider or a master, but one in a dream, telling him, "Your ship is ready." And the wanderer walked 200 miles through forests and fields, evading capture, following only a memory and a prayer. He reached a coast, he found a ship, and he escaped. Back home again. He was welcomed with tears and astonishment, but the story wasn't over, because the wanderer had brought something back from Ireland besides scars. He had brought a calling. One night he dreamed again. He saw a man named Victorious bringing him letters sent from the people of Ireland, and he heard voices calling to him, "Come and walk among us once more." He knew what it meant, and he knew that what it would cost. Ireland was no place for the faint-hearted. Pagan kings ruled, druids held influence, foreigners were not trusted, especially not ones carrying a strange message about a crucified God. And yet the wanderer, now grown, now determined, returned, not as prisoner, not as runaway, but as a messenger. He traveled the island on foot, slept outdoors, confronted chieftains, baptized thousands. He spoke simply, plainly, not like a scholar, but like a shepherd, because that's what he had been. He founded churches, ordained priests, converted clans, and defied kings. And though the legend embroidered the tale, he stood for something true, that the love of God can reach even the far edge of the world, and it did. There are stories you've heard, stories of snakes, stories of shamrocks, stories of fires that would not die. The snake's a symbol, more than likely anyway, of Ireland's spiritual dangers, its pagan shadows, driven out by his message. The shamrock, a teaching tool, perhaps to explain a mystery bigger than the world itself. The fires, echoes of the paschal flame he lit freely in defiance of king's decrees, choosing obedience to God over the fear of man. But the real miracles were quieter. A hardened raider forgiving his enemy, a druid laying down his spells, a chieftain choosing mercy over vengeance, a flock of believers remembering a shepherd who once walked their hills in chains. Those were his victories. Not won by a sword, not won by rank, but won by walking. He never claimed greatness. He never sought position. He wrote at the end of his life that he was a sinner, unlearned, at least of all the faithful. And yet Ireland called him father. When he died, some say near Sowell, where he planted his first church, he left behind not monuments, but a nation changed, a land that would become a beacon of Christian learning through centuries of turmoil, sending missionaries across Europe like embers carried on the wind, all because one captive boy learned to pray on a lonely hillside and answered a call that returned him to the place of his captivity, not to reclaim his past, but to redeem it. The wanderer had a name sung in March by millions who never knew the cold he felt, the hunger he bore, the courage he carried, a name etched not in stone, but in the memory of a nation that he loved fiercely. His name, of course, was Patrick. Saint, missionary, father of the Irish, and confessor of a faith he learned the hard way. So St. Patrick's Day is on Tuesday, and I'm not going to give you a meal plan and a drink. If you want to drink with some Irish cream, if you want a meal, you can't outdo the basics. Corned beef and cabbage. I know that's
Oh yeah.
I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and you know what? There's always shepherd's pie and other stuff you can do. But honestly, if you like corned beef and cabbage, and by the way, corned beef and cabbage isn't even an Irish thing. It's actually an American thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because corned beef was really, really cheap, and we had a lot of Irish immigrants at the time.
Was like an Irish American thing? Or immigrant thing? Oh.
Yeah, it was an Irish American thing because corned beef was cheap. So,
I tell you what, I love a corned beef and cabbage.
Me too.
I love it.
I love it. So he was a 5th century. He was a 5th century. So yeah, that was about his time period. So think I guess 400s into the 500s. So
wow. Yeah. I was excited for this one because I figured it out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I did. I don't always know a lot of these, but I did know that one. So I was quite excited.
Yeah. No, I always try to choose what I hope will be the more obvious one. In fact, the one that's coming up, hoping that we do meet again next week and can do it. But the one next week, I think you'll pick up on real fast too.
Oh, okay.
I tried my best to hide it, but I just sometimes it's just too hard.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to. You said St. Patrick's Day is Tuesday?
Yeah, it is Tuesday. It is March 17th. Now, remember, we usually celebrate the his death day.
Right.
Doesn't always work that way. It doesn't always work that way, but it is typically that way. Yeah. Now, part of the reason that St. Patrick got to be so big is because St. Patrick was always celebrated in Lent, and since it was considered a major feast day, I mean, like not just like a commemoration day, but like an actual feast day. It meant that you could break the fast for that one day.
Yeah.
And so if you were like fasting heavy during Lent, it was the one big day where you didn't have to fast. And so obviously, as with all of these days, it became a massive party.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean,
so it's on Tuesday, so that means probably no church on Wednesday.
That's right.
Pastor Chris won't be able to stand. So
it'll be all that green beer.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You Lutherans, you guys are okay with it, A lot of German.
We like our beer. I'm not gonna pretend we don't.
You incorporate a little Irish in there, It's like off the rails,
That's right. But yeah, and I mean, of course, the shamrock, as legend says, that he was using the shamrock or the clover to teach about the Holy Trinity. If you ever get a chance to look it up and you haven't already, do so. Look up the Lutheran satire. Donald and Connell, talk to St. Patrick, and it's pretty funny.
Donald and what was that?
I think, isn't it Donald and Connell or something like that?
I got no idea. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hold on. Now I got to look it up. Jeez.
You're saying it like I would know this. Donald and Connell.
Or is it Connell and Donald?
Connell.
I don't even.
Connell. St. Patrick's. Okay.
Lutheran satire. Look up.
Okay. Okay. It's popped up. I'm going to watch this as soon as we get off.
Oh yeah. You should definitely. I mean, he has a bunch of them. But look up the first one. It's called Bad Analogies, I think.
Wow. Geesh. Yeah. I have it pulled up. I'm going to watch that as soon as we're done. Wow. 2.5 million views, everybody. I guess everybody's seen it but me. So, okay.
Yeah, this is one of his more popular ones. A guy by the name of Hans Feeney does these. And this is by far his most popular series in terms of these two guys. So anyway, they're a hoot though.
Yeah.
They're a hoot. So the whole series is really good.
I'm going to check that out. All right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Here we're gonna close her up.
Yeah.
And so it ends. The light shines in the shadow. And now you know more about the story of one of the saints of history.
All right. Well, I know we close out that section and we got to jump right into the next section. So
And it's time for Lectionary Loop and our look at the upcoming lectionary texts.
all right, so we have a couple different texts that work really well together. And a lot of it has to do with being blind and giving sight. And the fact that a lot of the people around Jesus were blind. And in fact, he's going to heal a blind man. And so there's a lot of aspects of that kind of going into that. But there's a really interesting question that's actually going to pop up that I plan to probably focus on a little bit in the process of my sermon. And that is that the disciples see this blind man. He's been blind from birth. And it's in the Gospel of John, chapter 9. And they ask him, like, hey, who sinned? Like basically, why is this man blind, right? If he's been blind from birth, who did it? Like, did his parents do it? And this might sound like an interesting thought to us, because we just don't think like that. But the reality is that in the ancient world, especially, this question made all kinds of perfect sense, in terms of like asking that kind of a question, because God would, even in the Old Testament, right? If I will either bless you and your family for the 10th, up to 10 generations, or I'm going to curse you up into your family up to the 2 or 3 generations. And so it's a very communal thing and not just an individualistic thing. And so the disciples are actually asking a fairly poignant question, like, who sinned? Who did it? Why is this guy blind? Is he being punished for something his dad did, his mom, maybe his grandparents? Like, who did it? And so one of the things that he kind of brings up, that Jesus actually brings up, is like, no, this guy is blind. So basically the glory of God could be revealed to you guys. And it brings to light a couple different things. And one of them that is really hard for us as Christians to wrap our minds around is this idea that sometimes suffering can actually be for good. And that is a really hard point to wrap your mind around. Luther did it quite well when he came up with the theology of the cross and kind of pushed that and talked about that, because that puts it, squarely in the terms of Jesus Christ and the cross. And like, the cross for everybody that was there was a bad thing, but yet we look at it in hindsight and we go, that's a good thing. Like, Jesus dying on the cross is actually a really good thing for us. But it's hard to look at suffering and say, sometimes this is actually good. And that's just really, really challenging. And so that's kind of some of the stuff we're going to actually deal with this coming Sunday in terms of our Sunday sermon. So, yep, there's our lectionary loop.
Yes. That's an interesting thing to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost a cultural thing right now that you almost have to avoid all suffering.
Oh yeah.
It's like, and I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could maybe I should write that down. Maybe that needs to be another.
Right.
Write that down, because it is. I don't know. It's very interesting. I feel like once you've kind of lived through some things and time has gone by and you learn from those experiences, you start to realize that suffering sometimes is a very positive thing. It can be, Yeah.
I am trying to write this down. Yeah. Type.
I'm not actually typing. It's just a sound effect I'm using. Okay. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
Oh man.
I think I don't know if I told you this, but I bought this really cool LED lit up keyboard that looks like a typewriter.
Yeah.
except it's super loud. So if I ever am trying to like discreetly write something while we're doing something, it's
Yeah.
just like click, 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 click. Like, it's so loud. Anyway, all right.
Oh man. No, that's that. Isn't it's always funny to me, like when you start getting older, you know, and you start wanting and liking all the weirdest stuff. You know,
Yeah.
like as a kid, you know, like when you're a kid, you open up a thing of socks for Christmas. You're like, oh, that's terrible. When you're an adult, you're like, finally, man, I have some terrible socks. This is awesome.
Yeah. Or just, yeah, it's weird things. Like I've bought my mother-in-law several times alpaca socks
Yeah.
that are like super nice. And it's just funny because it's like I'll get her like one pair for Christmas, which they're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But it's like she loves them. Like she'll wear those until they completely deteriorate, and then
Yeah.
I'll get her another pair.
That's awesome. Oh man. All right. Are we ready for our last segment?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Church chatter.
Ooh. It's quiet.
Ooh.
I need to make that thing louder. See?
Church chatter.
It's just quiet.
I kind of like it, but a little quiet. But
Well,
yeah,
maybe.
probably a little louder. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll leave it. Don't forget, I have buttons.
Wow, that is really amazing. And you know what? You're amazing, Pastor.
This isn't me. Don't believe him. Don't believe the internet. Okay.
Casey, that's definitely you.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh man, I've had those all night long, and I keep forgetting to press. I'm like, I got these. I need to do something with it.
It is scary, a little scary that you could make me say anything you want. So,
Oh, it's too funny. All right. So the big things for us, of course, over at Sand Prairie are, we got our butter braids going on. We're doing the gospel houses. Man, we started this last year. This is one of the greatest things ever. Separating the kids out into gospel houses, and it has just been a phenomenal experience. I absolutely positively love it. And so the butter braids this year, I put, instead of just putting like one thing for anybody to sign up. So basically the kids get these brochures to sell butter braids. And then usually the little kids don't really get anything. But this year I kind of said, hey, you know what? I'm going to take these brochures. I'm going to put 4 of them out there, one for each gospel house. And then I said, hey, you know what? Go try to talk to some of these adults, see if you can convince them. And I've noticed that some of the adults are in fact voting on their favorite gospel house, if you will. And
okay, now can you tell me what is a gospel house?
Okay, so here's the thing. I completely, and I'll be honest, I completely stole this idea basically from Harry Potter.
Oh, okay, that's what I was assuming
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah,
but I didn't want to,
And so yeah, I completely stole the idea, and it's a great idea. But yeah, the kids earn points. They earn points by coming to church, by coming to Sunday school, through various activities, and now by selling butter braids. And again, it's one of those things. Like, I'm not even saying that the kids have to go out like door to door and sell butter braids, but
right.
But there's a lot of adults at our church, and a lot of them, like love to have a butter braid. They're a really good pastry. It cooks up. It's an easy breakfast, and so it's really good to kind of have a good a good thing like that just in your back pocket for whenever you want it, even if you want it for like Easter Sunday, if you wanted to. And and so we sell these, and some people want them, and so like this is the first year I've been like, hey, vote, kind of thing. And have the gospel house. It's just been a lot of fun.
That is fun. What are do they have specific names, the houses?
Yeah, it's the 4 gospels in the Bible.
Oh,
so Matthew, Mark,
okay.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And there's about 10 to 12 kids in each one. So
yeah,
and
that's fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, so we've been doing the gospel houses. That's been really phenomenal. And so anyway, so that's the butter braids. Of course, we got the Easter breakfast that's looming in front of us. I can't wait for that. We do breakfast, of course, on Easter morning between the services. But right now we have our regular Lenten services, which are going on 5:30 p.m. And then when we get to Holy Week, we won't have a Wednesday service, but we'll have a Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, both at noon and 7. And then, of course, we will have a Easter Vigil service, as it's called, and that'll be at 6 o'clock. Starts with a bonfire outside. Only service that starts with a bonfire, a liturgical bonfire. But anyway, and then, of course, on Easter Sunday, we'll have a 6 a.m. sunrise, 8 a.m. and 10:45. And so that's what's going on at St. John Sand Prairie. What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Oh, we're just getting, everybody kind of knows we're kind of just waiting until June till our pastor comes, but we're getting ready. I'm gearing up for Easter and trying to prepare music for that and getting all that going. So it's exciting. It's fun. I really enjoy trying to put together that service because there's so many great hymns and songs that just are, just perfect for that Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's pretty much all we got going on here, really. And then, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, all right. Well, again, if that's all you have and that's all I have, I guess that's it for now. We don't really have closing music, but I have buttons, and one of those buttons has a song on it, and I'm just going to hit it here at the end. And then we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with us. I guess hope you guys all have a great day, night, whatever it happens to be for you. Bye.
Bye. That is not a great outro music.
Okay, we're gonna try it again. New button.
That's hilarious.
New button. Wait.
That's better.
That's better. Okay. Bye, everybody.